Why is my name on this report? What are these accusations? And who said I'm pregnant? Ariana's voice trembled as administrators stared back in cold silence. Around her, flashes of surveillance photos showed moments she never knew were captured: her walking home, entering campus, visiting her grandmother. None of it made sense. But when the billionaire professor stepped forward with a claim that would destroy her life in seconds, she felt the world tilt beneath her feet. This wasn't confusion. It was a trap. This is the story of how a young Black woman was targeted by power and tried to survive it. Comment your city below. Ariana had always been the kind of girl people remembered for her softness. At 21, she carried a gentle warmth shaped by years of doing everything right, studying hard, helping her grandmother, and believing that kindness could still matter in a world too often indifferent to girls like her. She lived in a modest neighborhood on the edge of the city, waking before sunrise each day to balance classes, part-time work, and the responsibilities that came with being the only one her grandmother could depend on. Life wasn't easy, but it was stable enough to feel familiar. And for a young Black woman who knew how fragile safety could be, familiarity felt like a blessing. Her routine was predictable. She rode the same bus every morning, sat in the same quiet corner of the campus library, and spent most of her day in the science building. That building had two constant figures: the quiet janitor, Mrs. Lena, hard-working woman who moved with the grace of someone used to being overlooked; Tan, the stern professor. Adrian Hale, a man whose reputation for intellect, wealth, and rigid discipline made students whisper his name with equal parts respect and fear. Ariana didn't interact much with either of them, but she admired Mrs. Lena's resilience and avoided Professor Hale's cold gaze whenever she passed his office. She dreamed of graduating, securing a stable job, and giving her grandmother a life where worry wasn't a daily companion. Everything seemed steady, ordinary, manageable. Yet beneath that rhythm, subtle shifts had begun to stir. Shifts Ariana noticed but didn't understand. A lingering stare in the hallway. A hushed conversation that stopped when she approached. A look from Mrs. Lena that felt almost protective, almost warning. Ariana didn't realize it at the time, but her life was inching toward a storm she couldn't yet see. One that would expose an injustice deeper than anything she had ever imagined. The first sign of trouble drifted into Ariana's life quietly, like a faint breeze before a storm. It began with Professor Hale appearing in places that didn't make sense, briefly standing near the library entrance as she studied late, pausing by the bus stop when she waited after class, and even walking through the cafeteria despite his usual avoidance of crowded spaces. He never spoke to her, never acknowledged her presence. But his eyes lingered with a strange intensity she didn't understand. She dismissed it as coincidence. But coincidences shouldn't follow you day after day. The tension grew sharper during a late-day lab session. Ariana stayed behind to finish an assignment, enjoying the calm hum of machines and the quiet solitude. But as she focused on her work, she sensed someone standing behind her. When she turned slightly, she saw Professor Hale at the doorway, observing her with a stillness that made her pulse quicken. His expression was unreadable, not irritated, not impressed, but something more complicated, something unsettling. When she packed her things, he stepped aside silently. But Ariana left with a chill running down her spine. Within days, campus whispers began spreading. Students glanced her way, then turned back to their friends with murmurs she couldn't hear but felt deeply. Someone had started a rumor. A certain professor was showing interest in a certain student. The unnamed student wasn't identified. But Ariana felt the weight of eyes on her as she walked through hallways that once felt safe. Being a young Black woman, she knew better than most how quickly assumptions could twist into accusations. Mrs. Lena seemed to sense something too. She watched Ariana closely each time they passed, her gaze filled with a worry that didn't match her gentle nature. Ariana wanted to ask what she knew, but the uneasy knot in her stomach held her tongue. Something was wrong. She just didn't know what. One evening, as she left campus, a sleek black car idled near the entrance. Its windows were tinted so dark she couldn't see inside. When she stepped into the street, the car rolled forward slowly, matching her pace. Fear closed around her chest as she walked faster. The car did too. Only when she neared a busy intersection did it speed off abruptly, disappearing without explanation. She stood frozen for a moment, her heart beat loud in her ears. That wasn't coincidence. That was surveillance. The following day, she received a message from the university. She was required to come in for an urgent academic review. Confused and nervous, she entered the administrative building. The hallway seemed colder than usual, and the receptionist avoided meeting her eyes. When she sat down in the meeting room, 3 administrators faced her with stiff expressions. One slid a folder toward her. Inside were photographs scanned, invasive pictures taken without her knowledge. At the bus stop outside her grandmother's home, on campus late at night, they interrogated her with vague questions hinting at misconduct she hadn't committed. She felt exposed, violated, and alone. As she left the office, shaken and confused, she saw Professor Hale at the end of the hallway, watching her, his expression unreadable. For the first time, Ariana realized something much darker was unfolding. And she was trapped in the center of it. The breaking point arrived on a stormy afternoon when Ariana was suddenly summoned to the dean's large conference hall. She entered hesitantly and stopped cold. Professor Hale stood beside a long table where administrators sat wearing grave expressions. But it was Mrs. Lena's presence that struck Ariana hardest. The janitor sat alone at the far end, hands trembling, eyes red as if she'd been forced into a position she never wanted. Before Ariana could speak, a massive screen lit up, displaying even more unsettling photos of her taken in private spaces she never realized were being monitored. Then came the accusation. Ariana was supposedly involved in an inappropriate relationship with Professor Hale, a man publicly known to be infertile. The allegation wasn't only false, it was meticulously engineered to destroy her credibility before she even understood the plot against her. Ariana's breath caught in her throat. She looked at Mrs. Lena, who subtly shook her head with guilt and fear. The administrators continued speaking coldly, methodically hiding their prejudice behind polished language and scripted procedure. Then came the moment that shattered her reality. Professor Hale stepped forward and declared that Ariana was carrying his child. Shock rippled through the room. Gasps echoed. Ariana's knees nearly gave out. She wasn't pregnant. She wasn't involved with him. She wasn't even safe. Her world spun into a nightmare, the walls closing in as the full weight of the lie crushed her. Everything she knew about her life, her future. Her identity was suddenly under attack. Dear audience, where are you watching from? Drop your city name in the comments. Ariana's life didn't collapse, quietly exploded into public chaos. The campus buzzed with speculation. The administration scrambled to protect its reputation. And Ariana found herself fighting against a system designed to silence women like her. But she refused to disappear. Instead, she chose truth. Mrs. Lena, overwhelmed with guilt, finally confessed Professor Hale had coerced her into assisting with his surveillance. Using his wealth and influence to manipulate everything, he had orchestrated the rumors, the photos, and the accusations. He targeted Ariana because he believed no one would defend a young Black woman with limited power, but he was wrong. Ariana reached out to community organizers, student activists, and legal advocates. Soon her story spread online, gaining national attention. A viral post exposed the truth about the fabricated allegations and the professor's abuse of power. The university was forced to open a full investigation. Hale's polished reputation shattered under scrutiny. Mrs. Lena, though terrified, testified, proving that bravery often comes from those who've been silenced longest. Ariana's life would never be the same. But something powerful emerged from the wreckage, her voice. People began to see her. not as a scandal, but as a symbol of resistance, proof that injustice thrives when victims are doubted. And power goes unchecked. Though the scars remained, Ariana rebuilt her life with newfound strength. Her story ignited conversations on racism, abuse of authority, and the vulnerability of Black women in academic spaces. And the question that echoed across the nation was simple: how many more must fight alone before justice finally becomes the norm? Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more powerful stories and new videos.